Welcome to Scoop World Order. It is Tuesday. We are about midway through spring football. We have a lot to talk about, a lot of movement. A huge recruiting weekend just ended. We had a fantastic podcast with Bill Greene yesterday. We were bringing Nevadabuck in to talk about some inside practice information. A lot of stuff going on at the Woody Hayes. A lot of positions are up for grabs, so there's a lot of competition. And there's some guys that are really trying to take that next step to become superstars at their position. So really excited about that. We're going to break all that down. We're going to take your questions. We're going to break down a 5-star superstar defensive end. Watch his tape. Really exciting prospect, a guy that is leaning heavily towards Ohio State now. So that would be a nice feather in our cap. And given our depth chart with Jack Sawyer and JT, especially JT likely moving on after this year, we need to get some big time defensive ends in to rush that passer. So with that being said, as always, we're thankful for you guys, grateful for you guys, appreciate you guys joining us today. Again, our podcasts have been doing fantastic. It's all thanks to you guys. So click that like button, help us ride that algorithm wave, click subscribe. And if you really enjoy these, click the little alert bell. You'll get an alert to your phone. I know some of you guys, as soon as that alert pops up, you jump in here with us, and we appreciate you for that. We love doing the show. If you guys are on Spotify or Apple Music, please leave us a 5-star review. Help people find the podcast. Again, our podcasts have been growing on all formats, and it's all thanks to you guys and spreading the good word. That being said, I'm going to bring in my good friend Nevadabuck. Nevada, how are you tonight?
I'm doing good. It's good to be back talking football. I had to put down a dog yesterday, which was just, if anybody's ever had to do that, it's just a terrible, terrible experience. And so it was a little glum, but bouncing back with OSU football, that always puts me in a good mood, and happy to be here talking about it with you.
Yeah, it's brutal. I have a German Shepherd who I love to death, and I will be a basket case when that happens. So condolences, Nevada. I know that is very tough. We're into kind of the dog days of spring camp, if you will. This is kind of the third-ish week. They started, almost a month ago with the first 2 practices, and they take that week of spring break. They got a full weekend last week, so now they're kind of down the home stretch. Who are some of the guys that are standing out to you? Again, there's a lot of guys that I think have a lot to prove. There are some fantastic transfers. There's some great rookies that are should be high school seniors. Who are some of the guys that are standing out to you this so far, Nevada?
Well, again, let's just put this out there. This has been a great spring so far for Ohio State. A lot of guys moving forward. The spirit in the rooms are really, really good. The enthusiasm is really, really high. And I think it really, what it comes down to is that last year it was a little difficult. I think that there was a lack of leadership on the team, and it's because when your best teams are best players are underclassmen, it's sometimes they feel a little reluctant to seize that leadership role on the team. And last year, I think we really lacked a lot of those elder statesman leaders. And so this year's a little bit better, or a lot bit better. You've got some guys that are stepping up, assuming those positions, and practices have been great. There's been very few injuries or anything of that kind. But I'll start off with on a guy that I'll call this a position change, the slight position change, in that Chip Tran, who's a guy who came here as a linebacker, from Arizona State, switched over to running back, and now I'm picking up that they're going to start playing him a little bit more at fullback, and kind of that Mitch Rossi role. Reed is something that I've been talking about with Reed Carrico. We've talked ad nauseum about that, but they're experimenting with Chip at that, and that seems to be taking, and that could be really something that's interesting to watch. So I'd say Chip on the offensive side. And on the defensive side, Jihad Carter. Jihad Carter's a guy, a transfer from Syracuse, had not seen a lot of tape of him, so really wasn't sure how good he was. He's a good player, really good player. And we've talked about what a big difference Davidson's going to make for at cornerback for Ohio State. Well, Jihad's going to have a similar impact on the safety position. Just going to add another guy back there, along with Latham and Josh and Sonny and Kai, that can play. So really good looking players on both sides of the ball. And it's like I said, great spring watching guys step forward.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see the nickel position between Cam Martinez and Jihad Carter. I think Cam's a guy that, again, he's got fantastic ability, but he is just a roller coaster confidence-wise. He's a guy that I think when you bring in a starter from another program in the transfer portal, like, it always makes these guys kind of sharpen their pencil and and be a little more locked in when all of a sudden they're bringing in a guy to basically take your spot from you. And I think he's a guy that he gets banged on because he had that terrible moment against Michigan where he got scorched. And it's kind of like with Lathan Ransom. Like Lathan Ransom had that bad moment against Georgia where he fell down on the long touchdown. And it's tough when you play defense or you play in the back end, because if you get torched one time, that's kind of the thing that always sticks in people's craw. No matter how good you are, it's amazing. Like with Bradley Roby, for instance, people still remember Jared Alvarez from Wisconsin torching him, and Bradley Roby's on year 10 in the NFL. He's made probably $80 million, but they just remember that one Wisconsin game where he had his bad moment. And that's just it's kind of how it is sometimes. At Ohio State, when you're a player or a coach, people always remember you for your biggest moment. And I think for a guy like Cam and a guy like Lathan, I think those are two guys that they're motivated. They've got competition behind them. Lathan's got Sonny Styles behind him. So if there's ever a thing that's going to make you really focus, it's having a kid who's a 5-star freak of nature like Sonny behind you, and it just makes you lock in a little bit more. But yeah, I think that Chip is the perfect candidate to do the Mitch Rossi thing, because I think you have to find a role for him. I think that he's like Mitch Rossi times a million, just in terms of his overall athletic ability and talent. Now, Mitch was unbelievable down the stretch. I mean, the Georgia game, he probably played the most snaps at running back, just because of his pass protection prowess and his toughness. And he really played great against Georgia, but he's just nowhere near the athlete that Chip is. So if Chip could develop that nastiness and that awareness, that spatial awareness that Mitch Rossi had, and you put that into Chip's athletic and physically gifted body, because he's a burner. He's a guy, for as big and muscular as he is, he can really run. So it adds a whole new dynamic to that position when you have a guy. Let's be real, Mitch Rossi, awesome kid, awesome player, but he ran a 5 flat at pro day. He's going to be a fringe NFL guy if he gets a shot in a camp. But Chip is a guy that's a 4.5, 4.6 guy, much much better athlete. And if he takes to the nitty gritty parts of Mitch's role, where you're blocking, you're kind of like a flat guy, you leak out into the flats, catch balls, you kind of do those little things. I think he could be great. And he's the guy that I think, I'd be comfortable handing the ball to if he was an I formation fullback on a short yardage play, because he's a battering ram, and he's a guy that you just don't, you don't really want to tackle that guy in the box the way you would a normal running back. Defensively, like I said, I'm really excited Jack Sawyer's back at defensive end. Something Jim Knowles talked about a little bit today, the potential jacks of Mitchell Melton and CJ Hicks. I'm really intrigued by CJ Hicks being the jack, just because if you look at how the jack lines up, it's basically it's almost like a hybrid between a nose guard and a linebacker, because you're not quite at linebacker depth. You're kind of hunched over between the linebackers and the defensive line. But a guy like CJ, in an era where we don't run 3 linebackers anymore, could really be great at that, because I think when Jim Knowles has had a really good player at that position, he's been more of a linebacker than a defensive end. I think Jack Sawyer was kind of a fish out of water because he's too big. He's 265. And, I think a guy generally when he was really good at Duke and at Oklahoma State with that jack guy's about a 225, 230 pound guy. And that's CJ Hicks. And CJ Hicks, they're trying to find a role for him. It's tough when you play nickel 95% of the time with 3 safeties. Really, it's like just playing, like the traditional nickel defense with 3 corners. But I think it's going to be interesting to see if they use it, when they use it. Again, I just think that the flow of using the jack last year wasn't there. We ran it for 5-10 plays a game, and that's just not enough to get comfortable with it. But it'll be interesting to see that going forward. Nevada, we've got a practice Thursday, scrimmage, student day Saturday. Who are some guys that you want to hear more about, or you want to see kind of pick their game up and rise to the occasion? There's a big battle at right tackle, obviously, battle at nickel. Who are some guys that you're looking to hear more about over the next 4 to 8 days?
Well, I'm looking for some of the younger guys, and I'm looking for guys like Kenyatta Jackson. I'm looking to see what they do with Mitchell Melton. As you mentioned, the Tegra Zen Mikowski battle at right tackle is really going to be something that seems to be going back and forth with every practice, and both those guys looking good. Want to see more Josh Fryer at left tackle, just because it's fun to watch him out there and kind of maul guys. And another guy we don't talk very much about him, kind of a forgotten man in the running back room, but it's Dallin Hayden. I really like that kid, man. I really like him. He had a 100-yard game at Ohio State. Um, as a freshman, I believe he's a freshman last year. So that automatically puts him in rare air. And boy, if he is a physical specimen. He's certainly taken to the weight room, taken to improve his diet considerably, and it's fun watching him play. And I know the running back room is going to get super busy when Trey and Mayan come back, and Evan Pryor hopefully is back from injury, but Dallin's not going to take a back step to anybody. So yeah, those are going to be some fun battles to watch, and I just hope that Ohio State continues to have and I hate even talking about this, but I figure if I can talk it away, that's maybe a little keep it away. Just make it an injury-free spring. Let's not have some bad catastrophic injuries, and praying for everybody to keep away from the injury bug. So far, so good, and fingers crossed.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, last year, we couldn't get out of there without Mitchell Melton. Suffering a terrible injury where he was out for the season. And I agree, like being, developing guys, pushing guys, and getting out of there injury free. That's kind of the MO for spring practice. Again, they did not scrimmage as heavily as we had in the past. This past Saturday, so it's kind of interesting how we don't tackle as much, and they're really just trying to get these guys to the season. So that's the new basic MO of what they do. I think it's going to be interesting that we need to get some of these defensive tackles going too, because that's a position where I think we're thin. I think that the transfer from Maryland, if he finally does commit, will be a massive help in there. But it's just interesting that they're kind of letting guys like Tyleek and Mike Hill go a little bit more. Like they're not rotating as much. They're trying to see if these guys can push through the fatigue and play 6, 7, 8 plays in a drive instead of subbing out after 3, 4, 5 plays, which I think it's good. I think that when you play football, I think being in a rhythm, being in a longer rotation is better. I think that was something that really hurt Jack Sawyer last year because he just didn't really play much. He played 15 plays, played the jack position, and it's like when they run the jack once a quarter and then the other 3, 4 drives they're running a regular 4 down and you're not really getting in. It hinders your ability to progress as a player. Obviously, one of the big things people I think are the most worried about is the pass protection at right tackle. It'll be interesting to see if Zen Artigra can really pick up and do that, because that's the thing. Zen, I think if Justin Fry could go back in time, he would have had him practice on the right side last year as opposed to having him be the backup left tackle last year, because that was an entire year where he was playing left tackle and working on left tackle footwork and left tackle foot stagger and vertical sets, and now he flips over to right, and that's hard. I mean, I did it my freshman year. I played left tackle. My second year, I played right tackle. It takes some time to get used to it, and when you're running with the ones, you don't. It's not like JT and Jack Sawyer are going to take it easy on you when you're out there pass setting and your feet are a little bit of a cluster. And again, I always think in the back of my head, if you put a gun to my head and ask what I'd do on the O-line, I'd put Josh Fryer back at right and I'd put Donnie at left tackle. And then you have 2 really good pass blocking tackles. And that's what I think that you really need for this offense to kind of go into the stratosphere like where we've been. Because the last couple of years we've had Nick Petitfrere, fantastic pass blocker, Paris Johnson, DeWand. You need big time pass blockers out there on the edge so that the quarterback can set up. And I think CJ Stroud's going to be in for a rude awakening. Like, I think CJ is really good, but he's not going to realize how good his pass protection has been during his career the last 2 years when we had guys like Paris and Thayer and Nick and Luke Whippler and DeWand, and he's gonna have guys. He's always had a pretty dramatic edge up front on the offensive line, and in terms of pass protection, it's kept him pretty clean. When he goes to either the Carolina Panthers or the Houston Texans, that won't be the case anymore, because there are some bad offensive lines that are gonna be in front of him, and that's it's gonna be interesting to see how he does with that. Nevada, are there any other things that you want to see, schematic things you want to see? Jim Knowles says he wants to play more 3 corners this year, which I love. I think the nickel, in passing situations, like it really helps the defense out if you got a guy that can cover in the slot. But are there any other things that you want to see out of the scheme, out of Brian Hartline, out of Jim Knowles going forward through the next week or so of spring?
Well, like I said, I want to continue to see how Hartline and what kind of impact he has on the offense. I want Ohio State's been experimenting with a little bit of tempo. I want to see a little bit more about what they do with tempo and how they utilize tempo, and can they use tempo, to great effect even with the younger quarterbacks. And defensively, it's you talked about the three corners versus three safety looks, which is really interesting. I'm interested in the three linebacker looks, as Cody Simon is a guy who's just having a tremendous spring, and you've got to find a way to get a guy like that on the field as well. With Tommy and Steele, there's not a lot of room for Cody, but when you got guys like Cody and Sonny said, I mean, Cody would start for 99% of the other college teams in football. Got to find a way to get him on the field as well. So I'm just looking to see what kind of looks they do. The Sonny Styles thing, though, it's got to be, for me, as important as the quarterback derby is on the offensive side, just to where they put Sonny, and can they find a real role for him as opposed to sort of some sort of symbolic role? Can they, can Jim Knowles find a way to really unleash that athleticism? He's a 3-and-out guy. We're one third of the way through that, and they haven't used him yet. So we've got 2 years to enjoy Sonny. Use him while you can, and I want to see how the defense kind of puts him out there.
Yeah, and we talked yesterday, but he's this year's Paris Johnson in 2021, where you had Paris, who 6'7", first round left tackle, but then you had DeWand, and then you had Nick Petit-Frere, and then you had Thayer. So you basically had 4 NFL tackles on the roster, and so you got to kind of move him in. So let's go through it. DeWand is literally too big to play guard. He's too big and heavy. So you put him out at tackle. And then Nick was the best tackle on the roster in 2021. So you put him at left. And then you got to put Thayer and Paris at right guard. Now, Paris is 6'7", so he's taller than most guards. He'd never played guard before, but he's still second team All Big Ten, which was fantastic for a first-year true sophomore starter. And that's kind of what Sonny is. You got to kind of put him into maybe not the most perfect spot. Obviously I think a strong safety is his most perfect spot, or will linebacker, but you got to find a role for him on the field. That's why I said, I know that he isn't like a prototypical nickel, because a nickel's got to be generally a cover guy, a smaller guy. But on rundowns, I'd put him at nickel, because basically that's like what Darren Lee used to play, that third linebacker of the slot. And then you have like an extra, athlete / big body on first down that can defend the run. Now, do you use him? I don't think you use him as a jack. I think you got to keep him back at strong safety, back at the, they call it the bandit, because you got to give it a cool name. But yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see where they use that kid. Because again, like with Paris, when people were impossibly stupid and they talked about us starting 4 tackles on the offensive line, I'm like, so what, you're not going to play Paris Johnson and you're going to play Matt Jones or one of these other guys? And it's no disrespect to Matt Jones, but Paris Johnson's about to be a top 10 pick. You can't put that guy on the bench, especially when you know that he's 3-and-out. Like, that's a kid that, he was on track to graduate in 3 years. They had a plan. They executed the plan to perfection, really. And that's kind of where Sonny is. Like, Sonny's a 3-and-out guy. That's their plan. And you got to put him in at strong. And now, what does that do with Lathan Ransom? Because he was your best safety last year. Do you move him back to free safety and bump Josh Proctor out when Sonny's in? Like, who comes off the field if you put Sonny in at the bandit strong safety position? Is it Josh Proctor coming out? Is it Lathan, who was our best guy last year? That's what's going to be fascinating. Do you put Lathan down at nickel and run Proctor, Sonny, and Lathan at nickel? That's the thing that I think they're trying to figure out right now. And Jim Knowles had a great comment where he said, the guys that they get bumped into that first huddle, it's because they're dominating with the twos. Like, you gotta go dominate with the second team to get consideration to go up with the starters. And like, I love that, because that's a great way to put it. When people are wondering, well, why am I not starting? Why am I not running with the ones? Like, you have to dominate with that second crew to get bumped in and become like an or guy. Like, is it Lathan Ransom or Sonny Styles at safety? So I think it's gonna be fascinating. Again, we've got 2, 5. We've got about 8 practices left. So, I mean, you'll blink and spring ball will be over, but it'll be interesting to see the type of steps these guys take over the next little bit of time. We are going to get into a really exciting kid who looks like he's going to come on the scene. Dylan Stewart's Nevada is a 5-star pass rushing defensive end. He's out of DC. Ohio State has a lot of momentum here. We're going to go through his tape. But how important is it to get a big-time 6'6" defensive end to replace potentially JT Tuimoloau next season, after we really didn't close very well down the stretch this past year?
Well, I think it's paramount. I think it's, for the OSU defense only goes as far as the the pass rushing defensive ends go. And if you go back throughout time, it's Ohio State's ability to generate pressure, only bringing 4 guys, is really the key to the defense. When they can do that, the seasons in which they can do that, the defenses perform better. When they have to blitz to bring pressure, to get pressure, consistent pressure, they've struggled. So I think the pass rushing defensive end is a critical, vital position. And as you noted, we've got Jack Sawyer, we've got JT, both elite rushing defensive ends. Last year we didn't really score on that, and so I think a guy like this, who was long thought to be a Georgia lean, would be a great get for Ohio State. I mean, obviously I'm saying the obvious, but this would be a very exciting development, and I hope it comes to fruition.
Yeah, I think when you've got those wide open depth charts, you really have to pounce. Like I'd say, look, JT Tuimoloau is likely a 3-and-out guy. Jack Sawyer wants to be a 3-and-out guy. If he has a big year, he could be. And there's a long way to go. Obviously, a lot of things have to happen. Those guys have to get into double-digit sacks, likely to go. But yeah, like you gotta replenish. I mean, after we whiffed on Mateo, we whiffed basically on everybody down the stretch, guys that we led for and we thought we had a good chance at getting. Keon Keeley. So this is a guy that he's an exciting guy. Like I love the longer guys, the guys that are 6'6"-ish, just because I know the type of trouble that long arms gives to a general tackle. I mean, it's something that you have to deal with. He's got great quickness. Again, he's, when these guys are these 6'6", 220-ish type guys, they'll end up being 250. They'll end up being really good pass rushers. They'll have that explosion, because again, they just naturally get bigger as they're in the program. And, you got to get some juice out of these guys on the edge. Like Kenyatta Jackson, he's the guy that was a scout team guy last year. I like when they get to go against Paris, but a lot of times they don't really get to go as hard as they'd like. They don't get to go as hard in a game. So that can develop into a bad habit, frankly. There's guys that they don't realize that when you get to spring ball, now it's time to go crazy, like your hair's on fire every single rep. And they do some of the scrimmaging in the winter where now it's time to go, kind of earn your spot in the pecking order for spring ball. But yeah, that seems to be a common theme with the defense is they got to get guys to play harder. They got to get guys to not be tired, consistent effort. It's funny because that seems to be a theme that's underlying with a lot of the guys on offense and defense. So, I mean, there's been comments about why isn't Jaden Ballard playing? Well, it's because he doesn't lock in and go hard all the time, and he's got massive ability. But, when you're a guy who's got that kind of talent, you haven't really played, it's generally an effort and an attitude thing. And I'm not saying like Jaden has, a poor attitude, but a lot of these guys have to be taught how to go hard all the time. Like it's not something that they're just ingrained with. And, you got to stay on again. A guy like Brian Hartline is a guy that always went hard. So when that's your coach, he doesn't understand why guys, gear down and give low effort. Maybe if the play's away from them or they're not the primary receiver or whatever. So that's been a theme that's been picked up a lot in spring ball with the people I've talked inside the WAC is that, hey guys, you want to play here, give effort all the time. Take correct angles on defense, good pursuit angles. Because again, there were times last year where, those habits of not giving effort showed, we had a long run that we gave up against Michigan and some of our DBs did not run to the ball as fast as they possibly could. Or if they did, then they're the slowest DBs in America. But that's something that has been a big thing in spring ball is that getting these guys to just play hard, and I think that's going to be, if you can get guys like Tyleek and Mike Hall to give that big time effort for longer, then, this defense will just be much, much better. And I think, year two of the system, because, people always talk about, oh, it's year two, but the players are gone, Zach Harrison's gone and Ronnie Hickman's gone or whatever. But I think that the thing that people don't really understand is that sometimes the coaching staff in year two of a system is immensely more comfortable just coaching it and using the vernacular because it becomes secondhand. It's not something where they're trying to remember, okay, how do we adjust to this formation or this 3-by-1 or what do we do? What's the check here versus this concept? Like once you've been in the system for long enough, everything's just second nature, not just for the players, but even more so for the coaches. And that's something I'm excited about. I think that Ryan Day really wanted to get that secondary tuned up and more cohesive. So he made Tim Walton the passing game coordinator. So Tim Walton is kind of running the show in the back now. So it's going to be interesting to see how that impacts what we're doing. And the injection of talent with Davison and Igbinosun, who I think is going to be a day one starter. I think it's going to be really exciting to see. Nevada, as we watch this kid's film, I love this kid's film, by the way. Who are some of the guys or the coaches that you've got big expectations for as we go forward in spring ball?
Well, yeah, I mean, look, I think all the young wide receivers are guys that have really been stepping up and really using this spring to a big advantage. I mean, Carnell Tate, we've talked about how he lost his black stripe faster than anybody that I can ever
Yeah,
remember losing their black stripe.
yeah.
And Noah Rogers is another one who I just think both the Rogers boys are terrific players, and I'm expecting those guys to take huge steps forward as spring progresses. And defensively, I want to see more out of Jair Brown. I want to see more out of Jordan Hancock. And I think we do have four cornerbacks that can play, and that really is kind of a unique position for Ohio State compared to where we were last year, where we might only had one that could really play. And no, I'm looking more to see that out of those young guys. But no, most of all, I want to see the quarterbacks. I want to see Devin Brown. I want to see Kyle McCord kind of go after it. I've gone into the spring, thinking this was Kyle McCord's job to lose. I'm still convinced it is his job to lose. But Devin's playing awfully well, and I want to see if they let him go a little bit, let him run around a little bit and see what kind of dimension that brings to the offense. But no, I like what both quarterbacks are doing, and want to continue to see if they can be a factor in the fall, and really take what C.J. Stroud, kind of the foundation that him and the people that preceded him built, and kind of lead Ohio State on to another great 2023.
Yeah, I totally agree. And this is just a great clip of when I talk about the arm length on a defensive end and why it's so important. So, and I have no idea how good this tackle is, but you can see right away, our guy can outreach him. So this puts him in a really tough situation, and they're just running a little basic handoff here. But since the tackle's arm length isn't as long as his is, he can immediately has control of him, shuck him, and make the play. And again, that's something that I love long arm defensive ends because if he's playing against and again, if you're playing a 6'7" tackle like Paris, it's probably not going to be as advantageous. But there's a lot of tackles that don't have great arm length. That's why it's such an important stat, that NFL teams look at when they look at pass protecting tackles. Because this guy, like I said, I love his tape's awesome. Like he gets around the edge, he's low, and again, this is what I want Jack Sawyer to get back into because. When you're down in that 3-point stance and you're low, when you're a bigger guy, 6'6" guy, you're naturally going to start off the play lower as opposed to being in a 2-point line with the check. And that was one of my issues that I had with Ohio State, especially at the end of the season, against Georgia. We had to run the ball and our guys all in 2-point stances, where I think naturally you're going to have more power and leverage when you come out of a 3-point stance. Think of, Usain Bolt running the 100-meter dash. He's down in the blocks in a 3-point stance because that's the most advantageous position for power generation for a big time sprinter. And it's no different when you're playing tackle or you're playing defensive end. Like you want butt up in the air, this is like a perfect 3-point stance. And this guy is getting off the rock and, obviously they're running a screen or something where the tackle's turning back immediately, but you see his get off. I mean, the get off is what, if you have a great get off, it's miserable to go against when you're an offensive tackle. So, yeah, I really like this kid's film. Again, he's active. He puts his nose in there. He's not scared of anything. This would be a huge get for Ohio State if we get him. He's a 5-star defensive end. There's nothing in the universe that I like more than 5-star defensive ends. I like those more than 5-star defensive tackles or offensive tackles, excuse me, because I just know the kind of havoc that we've seen in the recent past with the Joey Bosa, the Nick Bosa, the Chase Young. Those guys, they change an entire defense once they show up and they can get after the quarterback as kind of a one-man army. And if they're not getting to the quarterback, usually they're getting double and triple teams, so that frees up other guys to go. It makes Jonathan Cooper a better player because he's got Chase Young on the other side of him. So super excited about that. I'm gonna take some of these questions right now. We got a lot of really good stuff. James Laurinaitis is a guy I think is making a huge impact in the linebacker room. I still think they have to figure out a way to get him on the road. They haven't done it yet, but he is running the linebacker room now. Jim Knowles is walking around. And again, I said a year ago, he doesn't need to pay his dues. He doesn't need to go be a GA or a QC or whatever, because James has forgot more about linebacker than probably anybody that's ever coached the position at Ohio State. And I think that his trajectory is superstardom, high level defensive coordinator, high level head coach, in the next 10, 15 years. But, you know, Nevada, how excited are you about the addition of James to the linebacker room, to get that room even more tuned up? He gets to deal with, a really good room returning with Seal and Tommy. You've got two guys that are all-American types. But what do you think James Laurinaitis adds to the Ohio State defensive side and then the program as a whole?
Well, I think the defense side, he had some youth. If you look at our defensive staff, it's kind of older guys. And I think, the impact, we all know the impact that Brian Hartline had on the offensive side. I think James is going to have an equal impact on the defensive side. And again, I think having another voice in there, like you said, a voice with NFL credentials, obviously his collegiate credentials are second to none. And no, I think he's gonna be great. And as to your issue about getting him on the road, I think OSU is committed to doing that. OSU is committed that to James. OSU is committed that. I don't know exactly how they're going to pull that off, but that is definitely the plan. And you're already seeing his impact even without being on the road. And I think Ohio State plans to get him on the road by next year, and that could even happen sooner than that. So something to keep an eye on.
I think that there's still a chance that they lift the cap on coaches come July. And then all of a sudden he is on the road, and he is a guy that is accountable coach. So I think that is in the process of happening. I think right now, the way that the coaching staff is structured with the 10 coaches, the special team quarter, I think is outdated and something we don't really need with 10 coaches. But again, that's the way Ryan Day has decided to go with it. But yeah, I think that, again, when you have a young, youthful guy, a guy who has lived and breathed and has been a legend in the program, he's in the Ohio State Hall of Fame, multiple-time All-American, two-time captain back when that was hard to do. It wasn't like now where we make guys that are sophomores captains and guys that don't really deserve to be captains because we have so many of them. Back when it meant something, like James was a two-time captain, that meant a lot. And he's a guy that, I don't know how many of my former teammates would ever have a negative thing to say about James, but it usually would say something more about them than it does James. So again, he's a guy that we all think the world of, and I think he's going to bring a new dynamic to coaching to recruiting on that defensive side, because we did not have a good year recruiting the front seven last year, and I think James is a guy that can be better than Brian Hartline, in my opinion. I think James was a captain, he's an All-American. He had a great NFL career, and I think he can really take a huge step for recruiting that defensive side of the ball. He's a guy that can recruit any position, really. And it's only a matter of time before he's a coordinator and a head coach at a very high level in college football. Some other great questions. You guys have been bringing some really good ones recently. So you guys that got here late, Dylan Stewart is the 5-star defensive end. So that's who this kid is. This is a question. So these are the twins from St. Ed's. I assume you mean Armstrong here. Deontay Johnson's the guy for the Steelers. He's the kid from Toledo, the receiver. I think the Armstrong twins are going to be good. I'm excited about them. I know that they've been kind of projects just because they're on that natural progression of gaining weight. A lot of people thought Ben Roebuck would eventually be in this class. He ends up committing to Michigan, but he's a kid that started as a sophomore, was a big kid, kind of grew earlier, hit puberty earlier. The Armstrongs are just kind of coming. Like when they were sophomores, they weighed 230, 240. Now they're up to 285. Ben Roebuck was 280 when he was a sophomore. So again, you got to kind of look at how big body kids develop. And I think the Armstrongs are going to be really good. I really do. I think that they're great kids. They're coached up well. They're two different players. One's a 6'7" tackle. The other one's about 6'5" guard. But it's going to be exciting to see how they progress, because obviously they're putting in the work. Like I said, they knew they had to get bigger to play at Ohio State. You had to be about 280-ish. And that's where they're headed. They'll be 305, 310 probably within a year or so, and they'll be doing it the right way. So, they got to have a big season. I'm sure they'll camp down here and get some good work in with Justin Fry. But yeah, it's going to be exciting. I think that when you get 4 kids in the fold this early. It helps on the O-line. I think they could take 6 eventually because they'll probably have some guys have to transfer out. But it's going to be really exciting to see how these guys grow and what they do as Buckeyes. Because again, you can't really measure where they're at now. You got to measure where they can be in 3 years. And that's the thing about the O-line is you're projecting guys that, they weigh 250 as sophomores, and then they're 275 as juniors, and then they're 290 as a senior. And then, what do they project as in Ohio State's weight room? And that's why projecting offensive linemen are so hard, because you're taking guys that are former tight ends, you're taking guys that are defensive linemen, and then you're projecting them into that O-line role. And it's a tough projection. Nevada, what do you think of the offensive line class thus far? Obviously we have Ian Moore out of Indiana. We have Mark Nave out of Toledo Central Catholic, and we have the twins from St. Ed's. Good, great, below good. What are your thoughts on the class thus far?
I think it's very good. I think it's a very good class. I wouldn't put it in the great category yet, but it could end up there. But I think it's a very good class. And look, it's not like the Buckeyes weren't aware of Roebuck. They had a chance to watch him and the Armstrongs literally side by side, and they chose the Armstrongs. And so that's just kind of the way that it goes. I wish Roebuck well every game except for one. And for Ohio State, Ohio State's had tremendous success with in-state linemen. They've had tremendous success with in recent past with Indiana linemen. So getting more out of Indiana is not a bad thing either. So no, really good class, and it's ultimately going to come down to development. I think that Justin Fry's got the raw material. He's got the raw material in the room. He's got the raw material coming into the classes, and we'll see how he develops it. And I think this class could end up being terrific.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, Mark, you asked us our take on 5-star Dylan Stewart. We're watching him right now. This is the second run through of his film. I love him. I would send our entire coaching staff to go see him the first day of recruiting. I believe it's April 17th is when it opens up, and the coaches can go hit the road 2 days after the spring game. I think he's a guy that you put the full court press on. I think that between Larry Johnson and his coaching, his recruiting, and the biggest thing is that the depth chart could be really wide open next year if JT declares and even if Jack Sawyer declares. So I would just load it up and go after this kid. Again, I like the wiggle. I like the shake. I think that really good pass rushers have a kind of like a slipperiness to them where they just don't stay blocked. And I've always kind of searched for a word that kind of describes like the really good ones. And you watch some of these guys and they, like Von Miller and the super, Nick Bosa, they just don't stay blocked. There's some guys we've mentioned in the past, like, one of Zach Harrison's biggest issues is like, he's just kind of like Velcroed to offensive tackles. Like he comes off the ball and he's just kind of stuck there. And that's not a trait that you want. Even with his physical ability, he can never really tend to get off blocks. And a kid like this, I mean, he does not stay blocked very long, and I think that's the trademark of the best pass rushers I've ever been around. There's guys that are super powerful, like Justin Smith from the 49ers, the guy that I played against in practice. He's an awesome player, but he's kind of like a supernova of power. But, guys like Aaron Donald and guys, like this kid, they're really, really slippery, and it's hard for tackles to stick on them. And they have a nose to get to the quarterback. And again, I love his film. Again, this is a guy, if there's one thing, the two most important positions, in my opinion, in football are quarterback and then edge rusher, pass rusher. It's basically guys that are quarterbacks and guys that can disrupt the quarterback, so on each side of the ball, that's kind of what you need. Like a great guy like this will make your cornerbacks better because they don't have to cover as long. They can be more aggressive, potentially, because they know the ball's got to get out quick. We had Chase Young, man. It made Damon Arnett into a first-round pick. It made Okuda into a first-round pick. Jordan Fuller was, a starter for the Rams. He kind of made our whole defense level up to, probably the best defense that we've had, easily the best defense we've had in the last, 5, 6, 7 years, probably since that 14 group. So, I put on the press for this kid because I really like his tape. Trying to think of what else. Yeah, we've got a lot of, again, you guys bring some really fantastic stuff. Here's the thing, and J-Bags, this is something that, again, I never, anytime I say something about the captaincy, I'm not bagging on Cam Babb. Awesome kid. He's a kid that deserved to be a 2-time captain. But it is like, it is a burden to be a captain. I mean, you have to play at a high level. Because if you are named a captain and you go out and stink, then no one's going to really care what you have to say. So, everyone kind of looks to you when you're the guy. And again, like in '07, I was fortunate enough to be voted a captain, and it's tough because like you have to be the example at all times. You have to be the guy that everybody looks to, and it's a lot easier to not be that guy and just kind of be able to do your own thing and kind of be off, in your own little world. But like when you're the guy that everyone has to look to, you got to act a certain way, be a certain way, and most importantly, you have to play a certain way. Like you better play at an all-American level, because if you're a captain and you don't make at least all Big Ten, at least first team all Big Ten, then I think you're a failure. I really do. I think you really have to go and be that guy. It's harder at some positions like quarterback, where they only take one quarterback as the All-American, but I just think that you really have to play at a high level, because nobody wants to listen to a guy who's out there and he's not producing and he's stinking it up. And that was something that was always right at the front of my mind when I was captain, is that I better go out and ball. I better play hard and play good and play through injuries and kind of be the example, because that's what they need. So, it's hard when we name 8 captains and we name guys that don't play as captains, that are healthy. And, again, that's their MO, but I don't understand how that helps a team be better when guys that don't play are supposed to be leaders, because it makes it hard on the guys that don't play any snaps and they're supposed to be leaders somehow. Nevada, looking for you guys brought some big time questions today. Yeah, defensive end. Yeah, I think James could be a great D coordinator. Nevada, how excited are you about the thought of Chip being the H back? Like, I thought that was a great nugget.
Well, what I like about that is, I mean, the first question, obviously, for any type of H back, fullback, whatever you want to call it, the Rossi back position is, can you bring a little violence to the game? And Chip's a linebacker, what I'm saying? So we already know he can bring violence, and then, you'd like him to be able to catch the ball upon, if called upon, to run it if called upon. And we know he can do that as well. And he's already in the running back room. So I just think it's a great move for Ohio State. And you're always talking about finding roles for kids, but meaningful roles, not just symbolic ones. I think that's a great spot for him, and I'm excited to see it. I mean, I think, like you said, he'll add some athleticism. As great as Mitch was, I mean, he was limited athletically, but Chip doesn't have any of those limits. I mean, he's an athletic freak, and I think that would be that's a heck of a line. You bring him in at fullback, you bring Xavier Johnson in at tailback, H back, whatever you call that, and it's going to be tough for the defense to kind of account for all these guys, because they're not really sure where these guys are going to be lining up, and I think that adds another just element of confusion for the defense, and that's confusion you can put to your advantage.
I totally agree. And I think that it's more important than ever in the era of the transfer portal to find roles for guys. Because back in the day when, guys would have to sit out for a year if they transferred to another Division I program, you could kind of shelve guys and say, okay, well, he's not going to go anywhere because he's not going to transfer down to 1AA, or he's not going to transfer and sit out and have to play scout team for a year. Now, like with a guy like Chip could start at 90 of the 130 Division I schools and be the feature running back and be the guy. And, so you got to be kind of terrified that, and Dallin Hayden could do the same thing, and Evan Pryor could do the same thing. So you got to figure out roles for these guys where, they are involved in the game plan, and they do have, like a set, okay, this is what I'm in for, and this is what I'm, this is my value to the team. Again, it's like with Jaden Ballard. Like, you look at our top 3 receivers are basically set in stone at this point. I think it's, Marvin, Mecca, and Julian. Those are the 3 guys. And then, you've got, Carnell Tate coming on like a banshee. And then you've got, Ennis coming in June. And Ennis isn't coming up here to watch. He's coming up here to take someone's spot. So if you're Jaden Ballard, man, you better lock in and get rolling. And can you be that consistent deep threat? Can you go give Marvin and Emeka a blow? Because I think that one thing that was, it was interesting, because Brian Hartline loves to leave those guys out there, and they get a load of snaps. Like, he does not rotate those guys nearly as much as I would expect. And again, he just doesn't trust Jaden Ballard. He might be starting to trust him a little bit more this spring, but we've heard about Jaden for multiple years now. We heard about him last summer. We heard about him last winter during, leading up to the Georgia game. we were writing about how active he was in with the ones and first team offense, running jet sweeps and deep balls and all these things. You're like, okay, a guy that could run, likely a low 4.3, high 4.240. Okay, this is some ways to manufacture some touches and get him involved. And then when Marvin got hurt in that Georgia game, he was nowhere to be found. They were going to Xavier and they're going to basically everybody on the sideline except for Jaden. So it's been real peculiar how they used him. But I think, when you've got a guy like Xavier Johnson, who the coaches trust implicitly, and he's a guy that's he's a dual threat, receiver and running back, along in the mix with, and then you've got the sophomore receivers that all redshirted last year, they're redshirt freshmen. It's going to be fascinating to see how they dole these reps out. We have a super chat. Appreciate you, D Sonny. I'm going to throw this up here real quick. When a coach is winning without sanctions, why would an administration do everything to keep that coach happy? Not do everything to keep it happy. And he says, speaking on Urban leaving. That is a great question. Nevada, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think Urban was threatening to administration. I think Michael Drake was threatened by Meyer's kind of footprint and the amount of influence that he had there at Ohio State, because he was winning, and his influence obviously came in. It was considerable when he came in, but it was growing, and I think Drake was a little man and was really intimidated by that, and that's why when this thing came down and he had a chance to embarrass him, he did. And I think one of the most telling videos, you want to talk about the Zapruder film or any of the Loch Ness Monster film, the film of Urban Meyer walking off the whatever that was, the dais, the stage, or whatever, when Drake puts out his hand and Meyer pretends he doesn't see it and just blows by him. That's when it all ended. If you want to know the exact moment that it ended for Urban Meyer at Ohio State, and when that cyst, they talk about the Grinch's heart growing 3 sizes. Well, I think the cyst grew 3 sizes in Urban's brain at that moment when he walked past Drake and walked out and he got on the phone and called Shelley and said, "I am out of here, man. These guys can go take it." So yeah, I think it's an interesting question, but I think that's the answer.
I think you summed that up perfectly. I mean, I really do. I think that Urban is a guy that, he's a beast now, and he doesn't take no for an answer, and he wants things done a certain way. And he graded a lot of people around the university. There are a lot of people that didn't like Urban, but he won at a rate that was so astronomical that they had to deal with him, and then, when all of a sudden you got a reason to poke at him and embarrass him and suspend him, they did it. And again, I think that, it's something he's never really forgotten. I think that he puts on a good front, but I think deep down, those guys had an opportunity to have his back and they didn't. They stabbed him in the back. They suspended him. They publicly humiliated him. And I think he just needed that perfect ending of, Dwayne Haskins, dropping 62 or whatever at home versus Michigan. And that was enough for him to pull the rip shoot and go get out, go take a comfy broadcasting job and then explore his options. Cause I mean, he very much was in negotiations with Texas, and he ended up taking that Jaguars job where he got offered a fortune. It was like a 7-year, $84 million deal. So, I mean, he wasn't done coaching. He's probably done now, but at that time he just, I mean, there was a point where he was thinking, I'm going to go to Texas. I'm going to go get Quinn Ewers. I'm going to go, see what it is. But he was really concerned about his Ohio State legacy, and he didn't want to ruin that because, again, his legacy at Florida is sketchy. There's a lot of people in Florida that don't like him because he left and he said it was his health, and a year later he's coaching at Ohio State, and he didn't want that to be the same at Ohio State. And now going to the NFL, it's different. It's a different challenge. It was an absolute ton of money, and it was an opportunity where you get to draft Trevor Lawrence, and he had something like $60 million in cap space and bunch of extra first and second round picks over the coming years. And, in basically a year after they got rid of him, they made the playoffs with Doug Peterson. So, I mean, he kind of saw the trajectory of that team with that young quarterback and cap space and some really high draft picks that you could hit home runs on. And that roster is in good shape. It's in really good shape now because you got, Trevor Lawrence is going into year 3 and you still got him for 2 more years on a rookie deal. So they got a chance to make a move. Now, I don't know if they're good enough to beat the Chiefs or the Bengals, but that's kind of the arc that he saw. He wasn't jumping onto some, LA Rams type franchise where they're in salary cap hell and they don't have the type of ammunition that they need to really be a competitive team. Because Jacksonville was the team that, they tore that whole thing down. They had all those picks, and he dove in, and it just didn't work out. Fantastic question, Deson. I appreciate you. Appreciate that super chat, my man. Let's see if we got any other questions. Again, you guys bring fantastic questions to the shows. Again, we always appreciate that because it really makes it fun because you guys just you bring some of the good stuff. Best pass protector of the running backs. This is a great question because last year, I don't know because we put Mitch Rossi in against Georgia. So I don't think that they trusted Chip or Dallin. Nevada, if you had to stand back there at quarterback and have one of these guys pass protect for you, who are you picking out of our current running backs?
Trey Henderson. Trey Henderson,
like that.
man, he delivers the blow, man. That kid, and it's so funny because I hear some of the rap on him is about like he tries to bounce everything to the outside. I mean, I've heard everything. He cuts too much. He cuts too little. He does this too many. He does it. It's arguing the exact opposite side. But watch him in pass protection when he's in there, and if they keep him in, man, he delivers the blow. I'm almost to a fault. But if I'm standing back there, that's the guy that I want watching my blind side because I guarantee he'll drive right through the guy and make sure that he's not getting there. He's a fierce blocker and it's a tremendous asset to any quarterback when he's not in there a lot when he does it, but when he does it very well.
Yeah, I think that's the right answer. I mean, when you see his physicality, his explosion, how jacked he is, like, he's the guy that can do it. He's a guy that's like Ezekiel. He's like Bijan. He's like Saquon. He's like a guy that could be a top drawer, top 25 pick in the draft in an era where you don't really take running backs in the top 25. So I think he has a monster year. He was one of my favorite guys, in high school watching his tape. His freshman year, I couldn't believe how good he was early on. Rave reviews. Wait till you see this guy. And then, of course, the first game he plays like 3 plays and, like his second play goes for like 72 yards to the house. But, we had such a stupid rotation to start the season that it was kind of embarrassing when you saw how good Trey really was and how little he played early in the season. It was kind of like Trey Sermon. Like some of these running back rotations have just been terrible. And I don't know if these guys pay attention during practice or it's just all about seniority or what it is. But, I've always been a big proponent, especially at running back. You got to let the talented horses ride, man, because it's obvious when you've got a guy like Trey Henderson that he's a special player, and I think he's gonna have a monster year this year. I'm going to I think we're gonna wrap this thing up. Nevada, you any final thoughts? This has been a fantastic show. Thanks for the great questions, guys. You guys are killing it with the questions recently. Again, that's always like the best part of these shows is you guys really bring the goods. But any final thoughts, Nevada?
No, just continue to watch the spring ball. Let's see what happens here with Devin Brown and Kyle McCord. I think these next few practices are going to be real interesting. They're going to be kind of turning up the heat on the quarterbacks and seeing how they kind of respond to the adversity. And it's always the key to how good a guy is going to be is not how well he does when things are going well, but how does he respond to when things go poorly. And I think Ohio State's watching that. They're watching the body language. They're watching to see how these guys respond to difficult situations, and they're going to really put their feet to the fire. We're going to find out a lot more about the quarterbacks over the next 3 practices, so keep an eye.
I totally agree. I think that they're going to ratchet up the pressure. I think they're going to bring the wood on these guys, and I think it's going to be awesome to see. So, as always, thank you guys so much. We appreciate you guys. Fantastic show. Fantastic audience in here. Again, that's why we love doing these shows with you guys because you guys bring some fantastic questions. So thank you guys as always. If you guys enjoyed the show, please leave us a like and comment down below. Who do you want to see step up over the next 4 days? We go into that Saturday, that big scrimmage day, Student Appreciation Day. Who are some names that you want to see step up? Who are some guys that you think are going to see starting roles? Again, I keep hearing about Davison Igbinosun. I think he's going to be a day one, number 1 corner. I think that they're just kind of making him earn his stripes and his dues with the twos, but his athletic ability and his attitude is nasty. It's infectious. And that's something that I think it makes everybody better when a guy like that shows up who was balled out last year as a freshman All-American, and he's joining our secondary. So I'm really excited about him. So as always, thank you guys. Thank you. We have so much fun with you guys. We appreciate you guys. We're going to get on BuckeyeScoop.com. If you guys are not members of BuckeyeScoop.com, it is the #1 Ohio State site. It's not even close. We have so much great information. Bill Greene has been killing it lately. Great inside stuff on practice. So, again, we'd love for you guys to join our Scoop family. It has been a fantastic, fantastic spring so far. So, hope you guys enjoyed the show. If you guys are on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave us a 5-star review. Appreciate you guys as always. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much, Buckeye Nation. Thank you, Scoop family. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Go Bucks.